Welcome into First Things First. I'm Sarah Kustok. That's Chris Broussard. This is Vincent Goodwill. We'll have Chris Canty joining us in just a little bit. A lot to get to. Post All-Star break. First NBA game last night.
It's great to have the NBA back.
We got Vinny here.
Yes, Vinny's back. The NBA's back.
We got
it's going to be a great day.
Overtime game last night, too. That kept me up longer than I wanted to be up.
Yeah, and you had to get up early, but it was worth it.
All right, we'll get to the good stuff. And let's start with that game, the late one last night. Rockets taking on the Warriors. Houston up big in the fourth when Russell Westbrook elbows Damian Lee in the midsection. While the play is being reviewed, Westbrook gets into a verbal altercation with the Warriors bench. Russ would be hit with his second technical and ejected. So here's what Westbrook had to say after his early exit.
I'm always the one that gets painted to be the bad guy in the whole situation where and then they asked me to walk towards the Warriors bench, so I'm just over there walking to the bench. And then one of the little young fellas tell me, why you walking over here? Talking mess to me, and I turn around and say, what you say? So now everybody's running over to me. Then I'm walking towards the thing, then Looney steps in front of me. So it's like I feel like I'm in a position of like, oh, well, Russ is being Russ, which nobody knows what that means. But I got to do a better job of holding myself accountable to a very, very high standard. And I'll make sure I leave no room for error to allow somebody and people to paint me out to be a guy that I'm not.
All right, CB, so we don't always hear Russ this expansive after a game. Do you think he has a point?
Well, he doesn't have a point about last night because he said that elbow wasn't on purpose. I mean, come on. That wasn't I'm boxing out. That was a nice little job. And players do that all the time, but he got caught. You got caught doing it. Doesn't make you a bad guy, but we saw it. And then everything that ensued after that was based on what he did with the elbow. So I thought it was fine that he's the only one got the technical. He wouldn't have been ejected had it not been for the technical he got early in the game. So last night, I think everything that happened was deserved at the end of the game. As far as the perception of Russ as always being the bad guy, first of all, he's not a bad guy. He actually is a very good guy. He's very much a family guy. He's very intelligent. He graduated in the top 10 of his high school class. This is a guy who teammates swear by. Yep. I've had several of his former teammates tell me he's the best teammate they've ever had. He's loyal. You know, he's about the team. And we saw when Kevin Durant left him in OKC that he wasn't a bad guy. He stayed with that franchise. He never complained about not having enough talent to win a championship. He never really went back at Durant. Yeah, the cupcake tweets and stuff. But as far as verbally taking shots at KD or something, he never really did any of that. So he's not a bad guy. But the perceptions, because he doesn't let people in, when he said Russ being Russ, nobody really knows what that is. He's right. He hasn't let people in. We feel like we know LeBron. We feel like we know Steph and these guys. When an athlete doesn't let people in, that's his right. But people tend to make up their own perceptions about you. And when you see Russ, he's not always smiling. You know, a lot of times he was good with the media there, but a lot of times he's looking at the door while he's talking to the media. He's not really making eye contact, looking like it's the last thing he wants to do. He's not always smiling. He's not accommodating. He's not just going to be nice to you just to make you like him. He's going to be himself, and he's fearless. So when opponents challenge him, he challenges them back, as you saw last night. When fans say something to him, he goes back at them. So people look at those things and say, okay, they've come up with this perception. And I wouldn't say the perception is he's a bad guy. I would say the perception might be he's a scary guy. Like, he's a guy you don't want to mess with, you know what I mean? And so I think that's why there is this misconception about who Russell Westbrook is, because he hasn't really let the public into his personal life.
I think we're very black and white people in terms of our views of public perception. When he's on the opposite side of Kevin Durant, we've viewed Kevin Durant as the good guy, so to speak. When they were going through their stuff in Oklahoma City and they weren't able to advance past 2012, I think it was, and those next 3 or 4 years, they couldn't get back to the finals. We view Russell Westbrook as the problem, right? Kevin Durant was the good guy, the MVP, the guy who should have been taking all the shots, and Russ was the guy who was trying to take all the shine. So we looked at Russ as sort of getting in Kevin Durant's way. Then we view him in the context of Stephen Curry. Stephen Curry is the nice guy, the wholesome guy that lets you into his family, that lets you into in sort of intimate sort of way, even if Russ is just as dedicated.
Right.
But we don't see it. And because he's not as accommodating, because he's no more questions for you, bro, and stuff like that. Like, those are the things that we as media, we form how the public sees these guys. And if they don't show us something, some level of playing ball, then we're going to present Russ as this sort of one-dimensional, two-dimensional figure. And the fact that this dude is really competitive and really surly and doesn't make like a habit of playing buddy ball. Right. He doesn't, like, he was close with Paul George when they were playing there, but he really wasn't close with guys on other teams. You know, him and Draymond Green getting into it. Him and, was it Dwight Howard or Kevin Durant, even when Kevin Durant left. So he's not the guy that looks like he comes from this AAU generation, you know, of buddy ball and everything else. There's things that we say that we want guys not to be. Russell Westbrook virtually is,
right,
except we don't like the package that it comes in. Plus, when you have technical fouls and everything else, people always present that as being a hothead, which I don't think that that's what it is. He's just competitive as all hell.
He's second in the league in technical fouls since he's been in the league since 2008. Second to Dwight Howard, so.
How much do you tie in, though, maybe his persona, his reaction with the media and some post-game interviews, with how the emotion, the passion, the energy? I mean, he's one of the players that plays with the most passion, competitive level. Like, his energy is at another level than a lot of the players. I shouldn't say that all the players, but just how passionate he is on the floor. How much do you think we link that with his interactions, his emotional nature, his sometimes unwillingness to really be open in post-game interviews or with the media? How much do we put those two things together?
Well, like I said, when you see him on the court, the way he plays, the recklessness, the fearlessness, the competitiveness, and then off the court, at least with the media, he's, like you said, a little bit surly, kind of like, man, I really don't feel like doing this, making you feel like it's the last thing he wants to do. You put those two things together and you come up with a perception of, like some people, like he said, maybe a bad guy, even though, again, I think that's false. But look, this historically, and Russ doesn't seem like the type that wants to be in the media or maybe be a coach afterwards. But if you do want to do something like that, it can hurt you if you're not, you know, you're not good with the media during your career. Look at Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, one of the greatest players of all time. He has never really had a good chance to coach in the NBA when he did want to be a head coach at some point in the NBA, because when he was a player, he didn't really let people in. He was just a bit surly and things like that. So there was this perception about him. Rick Barry.
Yep.
Rick Barry is I think Rick Barry's the most underrated superstar ever. You never hear talk about Rick Barry as one of the all-time greats. And, you know, when people talk on shows like this and stuff, but it's because when he played, people didn't like him, whether it was the media or other players or whatever. So if Russ is fine after his career, just going away, being a family guy and not really being involved with the NBA, this will be fine. If he decides he wants to get involved in terms of media or coaching or something like that, things like this, the perception could come back to haunt him.
What about the way he's been playing as of late? And just this the concept of that he had spent the entirety of his career to this point playing with one franchise, the love that Oklahoma City had for him, now with the Rockets, what he's been doing over the course of the last month, how he's taking less three-point shots. They're gone all in on small ball, and a lot of it is predicated on the way in which he can play and thrive. What have you seen out of Russ on the court, and just what you think he could impact with this Rockets team and as they continue on this season and the postseason?
I think probably since the first of the year, we've seen a different Russell Westbrook as far as attacking the rim, being a facilitator, not settling for the three-point shots. The things that we've been saying Russ don't do for the past 7 or 8 years when Russ was in OKC, just doing whatever he wanted to do and having the physical talent to make up for his lack of decision-making. The things that he's doing now, he's playing championship-level basketball. Now, whether the Houston Rockets have a championship-level roster, system, everything else, Russ, but this is the way that a guy is supposed to age. When your physical talents are starting to leave you, the explosiveness isn't there, you've got to play smarter, and he's taking what these defenses are giving him. And think about it, he's not the main guy there, but he's playing number one level basketball while still allowing James Harden to be the guy. And that's a tough spot for Russ, because Russ has always played like the number one guy, even when KD was there.
And I think the reason is simple. Small ball is about Russ. That's why they made the move, because when you had Capella there in the middle, Russ was taking a lot of threes, and he was only hitting 23% of them. And so now you move Capella out of there, the lane is wide open for him to drive to the basket, and that's when he started shooting fewer threes. And I actually think at this point, Vince, I think now they're less Harden-centric. In the small ball, I do think it's now more 1-1A, a 1-2 punch, versus before it was clearly Harden and Russ was just getting in where he fit in like the rest of the guys. Whereas now both of them are being able to maximize their abilities. So this is great for Russ. This is the first time in his career that the lane has been wide open for him, and that's why you're seeing him be so effective. They're the third best team in the West. That's nice.
And what does that do? Get you the second round of the playoffs?
Right, that's what I'm saying. To watch that. All right.
Have you ever had muscle pain? I'm talking stop you in your tracks, will never work out again. What am I going to do kind of pain? This is the kind of pain Dr. Jason Wersland was in when he created Theragun, the deep muscle massager that's unlike anything you've ever felt. Theragun isn't a cheap massager that just tickles your muscles. Their handheld percussive device uses a scientifically calibrated combination of speed, depth, and power to release the deepest muscle tension. Whether you want to treat your muscle tension from working out, an injury, or just everyday life, you can use Theragun. Theragun is the preferred muscle recovery device for over 250 professional sports teams and used by hundreds of thousands of satisfied customers around the world to reduce pain, increase range of motion, and soothe aching muscles. Try Theragun risk-free for 30 days or your money back by going to Theragun.com/cadence. For a limited time, our listeners get a free charging stand with a purchase, a $79 value. That's Theragun.com/cadence, Theragun.com/cadence.
On to some bad news for the Nets. Kyrie Irving will undergo season-ending arthroscopic surgery on his right shoulder. Six-time All-Star played just 20 games in his first year in Brooklyn. The Nets GM Sean Marks said, quote, "We are looking at the big picture here. We're not looking at the next 2 to 3 months." And guys, I call just about every game of the Brooklyn Nets around this team all the time. And I think the big question now becomes the injury history for Kyrie Irving. How do you look at things moving forward? I mean, the fact that he's just 27 years old in his 9th season, to me, though, again, you never know with a player. This can be a concern for a lot of players. And to me, I look at the fact that it's been different injuries. So he's going to have the shoulder surgery now. It was the kneecap. He's had another knee injury on the other knee. In college at Duke, it was the toe that he struggled with. So to me, when it's different parts of your body, sometimes that gives me more hope that it's just about trying to continue to get your body right and try and work the rehab. And I think, this whole injury throughout the course of the season, we say he played in just 20 games. He had missed 26 straight. A lot of that came from the fact that he and the Nets medical staff and him going to see different specialists, they were trying to figure out what was going on with it. And so he gets the cortisone shot right around Christmas time and gives it some time to see what the circumstance was like. He was playing well. I mean, he's had 2 50-point games this season. He had a 45-point game this season. When he was on the court, when he was healthy, he was extraordinary. But I think now it gives him time to just not even worry about it, not think about it, get himself right from top to bottom. And we know for this Nets team, still in 7th place there on the Eastern Conference, looking to get into the playoffs. They've got a solid core. But for him not to be wondering and beating up his body anymore, and just to know this is the plan and the process moving forward.
No, this is the smart thing to do. He's out for the season, have the surgery, get yourself right for next year. Because we all know, even if he had stayed healthy this year, it wasn't about this year. Yeah, you'd like him to develop chemistry with his teammates, but it's about next year. KD and Kyrie both healthy. See what you can do in the Eastern Conference. Now, this has to be a concern, though, going forward. Because Kyrie, I get what you're saying about the different body parts, and maybe that's positive. But on the other hand, you got to look at it and just understand his body's fragile. It's just as simple as that. I mean, you mentioned at Duke he was injured, only played 11 games. Comes into the NBA, gets injured, fractures his hand during Summer League by hitting a pad on the wall.
Then, facial fracture.
Yeah, and he's only played 70 or more games 3 times in his 9 seasons. So he's going to be 28 in March. And it's hard to say he's going to get sturdier and healthier the older he gets. We've seen this happen before with great point guards. And ironically, I think the best comparison is Deron Williams. And Deron Williams, first half of his career, he's on his way to a Hall of Fame career. When he gets with the Nets and re-signs the big deal with them, the injuries just started kicking in and he was never the same. I'm not saying that's going to happen with Kyrie. And Kyrie probably already has had a Hall of Fame career. He's probably already a Hall of Famer. I tend to think he is in my book. And I just hope he doesn't go the way of Deron Williams and that he can stay healthy. I don't doubt that when he plays, he's going to be lights out. I mean, this dude is phenomenal. When he's on the court, he's going to do damage. But I am questioning going forward, how much is he going to be able to be on the court? And maybe some type of load management might be in order.
If you say Kyrie is a Hall of Fame, I'm afraid of that speech he's going to give.
Do you disagree?
I don't know if he's a Hall of Fame.
Great individual numbers.
One of the greatest shots.
Arguably the best shot in NBA history. Arguably.
Absolutely.
And then put up great numbers, too.
But my question.
Best ball handler in NBA history.
Absolutely.
In the Hall of Fame conversation.
Absolutely. No. I was kind of shocked at that one, Chris, but I forgot Chris.
I want to hear this.
Chris is from Cleveland, so no, I don't want to cringe.
I'm all over. I'm Cleveland and Jersey.
All of that. My thing with Kyrie is, if he's going to be your second best player and the Nets are trying to build for a championship, your first best player has to be LeBron. It can't be Kevin Durant, because when I say this, LeBron is a system in a way that Kevin Durant is not.
He is his own system.
He's his own system. Kevin Durant is a guy that fits and exists outside of any system. He can get you a bucket in any situation. How can you build a team around the player who is pretty much unreliable from a health standpoint? And he plays the most important position on the floor at point guard. Like, I have fears about Kyrie's durability long term. I get what you're saying. It's different injuries every time. It's freak stuff. But it's freak stuff. You never know where it's going to come from. It's not an accumulation injury. It's not an ACL or an Achilles. That's something that comes from playing basketball over long stretches of time. Load management only works when you know exactly what you're looking for. With Kawhi, you knew it was the quad and the knee, so you can kind of work around that and manage his load. With Kyrie, it's something so different every time. This time it's the shoulder. What are you preparing for? Are you preparing for the shoulder next time? Are you preparing for the knee? Are you preparing for a hand? Like, what do you do? And then what type of culture are you building around that when you have Spencer Dinwiddie still there, Karis LeVert still there? How are you guys allowing to develop when you have to bring in a Kevin Durant who's going to be high maintenance and they haven't played with this guy before? Like, you only have a 2-year window before guys can start opting out of contracts. This isn't 7-year contracts. You have a short window to maximize what you have with these guys. So you have to see what you have with these guys first. And the Eastern Conference is only getting better as time goes on.
Well, I will agree with you on that. But to me, the Spencer Dinwiddie and Karis LeVert point is why I think the load management, or what Kyrie's never played less. And his rookie year was the least amount of games he played. It was 51. But other than that, more often than not, I think last 6 years, he had once less than 60 games. It's different injuries. I get what you're saying about the load management. But you got two guys that can play the point, they can play off the ball. Same can be said for Kyrie Irving. I think it just becomes a question of how you're going to utilize these players, and maybe just not relying on Kyrie to be your only point guard. The ability to use a durable and available player like a Spencer Dinwiddie, that's how do you build around Kyrie and Kevin Durant? Who do you need to fill the pieces in with them, understanding that there may be times he needs to take games off? And I'm not sure how you even approach that heading into next season. And also, just was given the fact, and I watched this with him, he got the facial fractures early in training camp and through the preseason. So he was doing like triples throughout the course of, he was going to the gym at night and he was doing extra, and he felt like he wasn't able to get out there. And sometimes you wonder how much that affects a body as you continue throughout the course of the beginning of the season.
The challenge for them is going to be, they're going to be two separate teams. Because without Kyrie, Dinwiddie, Karis LeVert, Joe Harris, they are grinders. They're equal opportunity guys.
They play with structure.
They play team basketball, share the ball. They kind of remind me of the Clippers last year without Kawhi and Paul George. Okay, you drop Kevin Durant into that, and that's a great mix because you got your superstar and the other guys know their roles, will accept their roles. Durant can play sharing the basketball as he did in Golden State, but when you need to, I'm going to go get you a bucket. You bring Kyrie, and I think what you're going to have to do with those two, kind of like you did with LeBron in Cleveland, it was LeBron and Kyrie were the guys. They did their own thing, and everybody else just kind of fit in around them. It's going to have to be that in Brooklyn, I think. It's going to be Durant and Kyrie doing their thing, and everybody else fits in. But when Kyrie's not there, it's going to be a whole nother style of play. So it's going to be interesting.
That's tough, isn't it?
It is tough, but I almost feel like that's what this year is almost the use for that.
But you're not able to do it since Kyrie's.
Well, but that's not the off and on. The understanding that maybe things may be tweaked or how you play on the floor is different. I also think Spencer Dinwiddie and Karis LeVert were the first guys to say we need to fit in when Kyrie. This is during the course of his 26. Right. We need to figure out how to fit in around him. So when you have teammates that embrace this concept, I think that's the first step to trying to figure out a way to make it work.
It's going to be fun to watch. And the East, as you said, it's getting better, but it's still not the West. So I think they'll have a shot. I wouldn't pick them to win the East next year, but I think they'll be a contender.
We talk about physical fitness a lot, but there's another side to the game that's just as important. I'm talking about mental fitness. Calm, the #1 app for sleep and meditation, has now teamed up with LeBron James to help you train your mind. LeBron and Calm know that your mind is like any other muscle in your body, and Calm can help you train your brain so you sleep better, so you have less stress, so you perform at your best. For LeBron James, sleep is an important part of his mental fitness routine. He says, getting good sleep and finding time to rest is one of the most valuable things I can do for my body and mind. And if you head to calm.com/sports40, you'll get 40% off a Calm Premium membership. With Calm, you have access to the nature scenes LeBron loves and so much more, like sleep stories and meditations. For a limited time, our listeners can join LeBron in using Calm with a 40% discount to an annual membership at calm.com/sports40. Unlock content to help you focus, ease stress, and sleep better. Get started at calm.com/sports40. That's calm.com/sports40.
On to some football. The Browns are coming off a disappointing 6-10 season. One of the main reasons was Baker Mayfield's 21 interceptions that trailed only Jameis Winston for worst in the league. But new Browns offensive coordinator Alex Van Pelt is not discouraged, saying Baker's future is bright. So, Canty, are you buying Mayfield still has a bright future?
Yeah, I'm buying that. I think Baker Mayfield still has the opportunity to live up to the expectations of being the #1 overall pick 3 years ago, but it starts with him having the right attitude, and by all accounts, it seems like he's turning the corner in that regard. Watching him do the sit-down with Nick and Jenna down in Miami the week leading up to the Super Bowl, you heard a level of humility and some contrition in terms of things that Baker wishes he would have done better in his second year in the National Football League. So I think that attitude is the way that he needs to approach the offseason, because there are a lot of things that he needs to improve on. And his quarterbacks coach, Alex Van Pelt, spoke on those things, talking about having quiet feet, being able to dance in the pocket rather than being erratic. I think he compared it to listening to rock music, how Baker's feet looked in year 2. So I think that's one of the fundamental things that he has to get cleaned up. The technical aspects of playing the position, decision-making. But for me, the biggest thing that Baker needs to improve on is the intangibles. his leadership ability, his ability to be a stabilizing force within the organization. I mean, the Cleveland Browns have had 7 head coaches in the last decade of football. At some point, they're going to need somebody come in there and help them change the culture, somebody to be steady when everybody else is being erratic. And I think a quarterback is in a prime position within an organization in order to be able to do that. So that's what I'm looking for from Baker Mayfield. Being able to set the agenda for your football team, that is the most important thing you can do as a quarterback. He didn't do that last year, focused on the outside noise, focused on making progressive commercials, whatever it was. But Baker Mayfield has got to get back to the fundamentals of the position, but then also recognizing the position that he's in within the organization and being responsible with that platform.
What Alex Van Pelt said, he said he wants his footwork more like Mozart than Metallica. Okay, so I don't know if he'll ever be Mozart, but he doesn't have to be Metallica. So I'm with Chris on this. I think the future is bright. His rookie season was too impressive to give up after 2 years, especially when you had all the chaos in Cleveland last year. Freddie Kitchens, the environment it wasn't stable. It was kind of chaotic. They had problems with the offensive coordinator and Kitchens. There was tension, too many people involved in the play calling. So I actually think I think the maturity is a good sign. I think he will appreciate the stability and the structure that Kevin Stefanski and Van Pelt will bring. And if you look at their history now, Van Pelt with the quarterbacks coach with Aaron Rodgers, and Rodgers has a career year. I get it. It's Aaron Rodgers. I don't know how much Van Pelt had to do with that. But with Stefanski, you're looking at guys like Case Keenum and Kirk Cousins having career-type years under Stefanski. That West Coast offense, he's going to use a lot of the run, so Baker's not going to have to carry everything on his shoulders. And one thing I love that I'm hearing out of Cleveland is play action. Last year, Baker was very good in play action. They didn't use it a lot, which baffled me because you had Nick Chubb. Why in the world would you use a lot more play action?
And you had Kareem Hunt in the second half as well. Yeah.
But when they did use it, the limited time they did, Baker's numbers were much better than when they didn't use it. So my only problem with the Browns next year, because I like the people they've brought in, is the division. I'm just looking at it like Baltimore obviously is not going anywhere, and the Steelers were good last year. So this year with Big Ben back, they're probably going to be better. So they're going to have a tough time making the playoffs. But I do think Baker will show major improvement, and the future is bright.
How much do you think it is mechanics, fundamentals, things on the field as opposed to the leader? You mentioned the leadership. Part of his bravado, it felt like, made him who he was. How much do you think it's the maturity and the growth and that leadership factor as opposed to what he actually needs to work on fundamentally?
Well, I think it's a combination of all of those things. I don't think it's more one than the other. They walk hand in hand. So he does have to have more attention to detail in terms of what he's doing on the field. Bill Parcells used to say this: I give a guy 3 years to show me what he is. So this is a pivotal season for Baker Mayfield, and I think that he has to approach it with that level of urgency, knowing that he's got a new head coach, his third head coach in as many seasons. That's something that you have to think about. And then also recognizing where this team is at in terms of the collection of talent, because you don't have a lot of opportunities to have this kind of talent on a football team. And so you got to be able to take advantage of that if you're the Cleveland Browns, especially when you have a quarterback on a controllable pay scale. So I think that this is an important year for Baker Mayfield, as well as a couple of other guys in his draft class. Josh Rosen, it's a big year for him down in Miami. We'll see what happens with that. And then also Sam Darnold. But if you look at the other two quarterbacks that were drafted in the first round in 2018, Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson, you look at where they're at in their career in comparison to Baker Mayfield, it just lets you know the importance of having the structure that you talked about through the organization around a young player that's trying to realize their potential.
Could be a pivotal year, too, for the Patriots. Let's get to them. For the last 20 years, there's been two names synonymous with their success, Belichick and Brady. But with TB12's future in New England still up in the air, former Pats linebacker Rob Ninkovich thinks the dominoes could fall with a Brady exit, saying, quote, it's going to be difficult to try and bring everybody back. I would think if Tom comes back, one of the other players, McCourty, Van Noy, Collins, comes back. But if Tom doesn't come back, I don't know if those guys are going to want to stick around, because was, what's the outlook for the team? Is it a rebuilding phase? What happens moving forward? See, can Belichick win a Super Bowl without Brady?
Yeah, I think Belichick can absolutely win a Super Bowl without Brady. I think Belichick has aspirations to catch Don Shula in terms of overall wins. Don Shula, the most winningest coach in NFL history. I think Belichick is trying to get to that point, and it's going to take him having, several really good seasons in order to do it. And I think that he has the ability even without Tom Brady, because with Bill Belichick, it's not about a diminishing skill set. He's not like a player. He's a coach.
Right.
And so his knowledge base only continues to grow, and he'll have an opportunity to get even better at what he does. But the thing that makes him special and that separates him from the other head coaches in the National Football League is his ability to evaluate pro personnel. He can look at his talent and recognize what they do well and what they don't do so well, but he can also look at your team's talent and recognize their deficiencies and then put them in positions where he can exploit them. So I think that's one of Belichick's gifts, and he'll have the ability to do that even without TB12. But as far as Tom Brady is concerned, I think the people, if he decides to leave, will use the rest of his playing career as a referendum to gauge who was more important to the 20-year marriage between him and Bill Belichick. Fair or not, I think that's what ultimately will end up happening with this. But it makes too much sense from where I sit for both of these guys to come back together. That's why I believe it will ultimately end up happening. And what Rob Ninkovich is talking about won't be a factor.
Well, first of all, it's not fair. If he leaves New England and people do look at this as a referendum on him, was he just a system quarterback for Belichick, or is he great in his own right? He'll be 43. He might fall up like Michael Jordan. We don't look at Washington as a referendum on how great he was, even though he didn't even make the playoffs there. So I think that would be unfair for Tom Brady.
But it'll happen, though. It'll happen.
Maybe people that aren't thinking logically might do it. But I'm just saying, like, he's 40. He might fall off even with New England. At 43, it's going to come at some point. 43, 44, 45, whatever it is. As far as can Belichick win a Super Bowl without Brady, he can, of course, because he is a great coach in his own right. I don't think it would be soon because, number one, next year they wouldn't be a contender, in my view. They wouldn't definitely not be a contender. At best, they might be able to squeak into the playoffs. The big question is, who's this quarterback going to be? Like, how, and you don't always just get a new franchise quarterback. It could be 5, 10 years before they found that guy who really is a guy is your franchise quarterback. So that's a big issue. And I'll say this, Chris. When people talk about Belichick or Brady, I think they lean more toward Belichick, it seems. The burden of proof, if they split up, to me, the burden is on Belichick to prove he's all that without Brady. And I know I'm going back over his whole career, and obviously he's improved, gotten smarter, become a better coach over the years, but he's coached 7 years without Tom Brady. He's made the playoffs once. Everybody talks about the Matt Castle year, 11-5. They still didn't make the playoffs. And even if you look in New England, when Bill Belichick took over the New England Patriots, Drew Bledsoe was the quarterback. Bledsoe was a 4-time Pro Bowler. Actually left New England after Brady took over and became a Pro Bowler again in Buffalo. So Bledsoe was a very capable quarterback. They went 5-11 in Belichick's first year. The second year, they go 0-2. And they lose to Cincinnati, which was a bad team that year. Brady steps in because Bledsoe gets hurt. The rest is history. 11-3, win the Super Bowl, and now we got this dynasty. So, in my view, the burden of proof is not so much on Brady to prove I can do it without Belichick. It's on Belichick to prove I can do it without Brady.
Well, I'm not in a position where I feel comfortable doubting either one of those guys. So, I guess it remains to be seen. But back to your point about who they're going to get to replace Tom Brady if he walks out the door, keep in mind that the Patriots are going to be on the hook for that $13.5 million cap charge based on the prorated portion of Brady's bonus on the last deal. So they're going to have to find a quarterback that's on a controllable pay scale. That's why I don't rule out the option of Cam Newton being able to trade for him and his $19 million cap number. That way you can still keep the quarterback position cost relatively low in comparison to what market value will be in free agency.
And it's only 1 year.
Yeah,
why not give it a try?
And it's only 1 year. So I just feel like with Bill Belichick, he'll find a way to make it work. He's got a contingency plan if Tom Brady ends up walking out of the door. My only thing is this. I don't think it's in Tom Brady's best interest if he wants to continue to play at a high level and compete for championships.
So you ultimately think Brady ends back with the Patriots?
I think they end up back together, although I'm sure that Jets fans hope that don't happen. I mean, they're probably a little upset that Mo Lewis knocked Drew Bledsoe out in the first place and started the dynasty.
On to the Sixers hosting the Nets last night. Ben Simmons was out nursing a back injury, so Joel Embiid had to carry the load, finishing with a game-high 39 points to go along with 16 rebounds. The Sixers get the overtime win, 112-104. And here's Embiid after his dominant performance.
I'm here. I belong in being the best player in the world. I just intend to just, keep coming out every single night, just play hard, trying to get wins and, just go out and trying to win a championship.
Vince, do you think that Embiid can carry the Sixers into
Judging
a
by that smile,
deep
playoff
run?
Carry them where? Like, deep where? I don't see it. Like, you got to be able to stay on the floor. You got to be in shape. You got to be a big man with 2 moves and 2 counters, and I don't see that, short of that, open floor move. Like, there's so many questions about Joel Embiid from a performance standpoint. Don't get me wrong. I will take him over Ben Simmons. I feel like he's a much more bankable commodity that you can build around from a team standpoint because his blind spots aren't as blind as Ben Simmons's. But do y'all remember the second half of that playoff series last year against Toronto, where Marc Gasol and Serge Ibaka and those bigs shut him down when you had a 2-1 lead and you could have basically carried your team to the NBA Finals and you did not? I don't see it from a game standpoint. So from him not being in shape, from him not necessarily having the requisite pieces around him, I don't like the construction of that team. Chris, I don't see how he can carry them anywhere, even past the first round with the wrong matchup. They played Miami in the first round.
So you say they can't get out of the first round?
Lunch meat in the first round.
Miami's been struggling lately.
It's about matchups.
Out of the 4th spot.
Miami's lost 5 of 6.
Name me a road game they've won this year.
Oh, they've been horrible on the road.
Yes.
They've been tremendous at home.
But if they get one of those top 4 spots,
right?
Then
And they're 26-2 at home, best record in the league. Mm-hmm. They've beaten the top 4 teams in each conference at home. Now I get it. They better show major improvement on the road. Their road record is equal to the Knicks. Enough said, all right? But over the second half of the season, if they show improvement on the road, and that's really about maturity and focus. And the challenge with Joel, look, I don't mind him saying I want to be the best player in the world or I am the best player in the world. I like that bravado and that confidence. The challenge with Joel is, no, we don't really believe anything he's saying. Because just 2 weeks ago, he was tweeting or IG, Instagram with Jimmy Butler about maybe going to Miami. All right, let's call it what it was. Then he gets to the All-Star break, and he's talking about how he and Ben, they're on the same page. They believe in each other. We're together. The media's trying to divide us and all that. What Joel needs to do is just go out on the court and prove it. That's it. Talk all you want, but get on the court and follow it up. Now, I would obviously go with Miami or Milwaukee right now in the East. But if I had to pick another team, I think the best team to challenge them would be Philadelphia.
But they got to get there. They have to get there, and I don't think they will actually get there. Would you?
They got them. Who has more talent?
Who has more upside?
Upside and talent in the East than Philadelphia.
The same things we're saying about Philadelphia right now, the same things we said about Boston last year. And what happened to Boston last year? They swept in the first round. They took game one. Yes,
did we say that about Boston?
Yes, we did.
Boston
we went to the playoffs.
Joel Embiid.
Tatum and Brown.
Right, they were still young.
The tone of it was this team went. The tone of Boston last year was they went to Game 7 of the Eastern Conference Finals against LeBron. There's no more LeBron. They're going to turn it around. Wait till their pieces all get together.
To me,
Philly, we're ignoring the evidence that we see and we're going off the hope factor.
I'll give you that. But what I'm saying, like Boston, they didn't have as much talent, in my view, as what Philadelphia has now. They're well coached.
Does Philly have a lot of talent?
Yeah. Joel Embiid, Ben Simmons, Tobias Harris. You added a couple shooters in Alex Burks and Glenn Robinson, who they haven't really panned out yet, but you brought more shooting to space the floor, which is critical for them. Bringing Al Horford to the bench and putting another shooter out there is huge. Now, they have a major structural flaw that might come back to haunt them, probably will. when they want Ben and Joel on the court at the end of the game because those are your two best players. But the problem is nobody's going to guard Ben on the perimeter. And so they have to put him down near the bucket to get a team to guard him, and that forces Embiid out on the perimeter. I've been saying this for 2.5 years. Embiid said it last month. He's right. It's a big-time problem because if I'm in the fourth quarter and I need a bucket, I want Embiid down low. But he's out by the three-point line like he's 6'5" because we got Ben down low. And so you nullify.
Do you think it's a coincidence that in his post-game interview he brought up the fact how he can hit free throws down the stretch?
Absolutely.
I mean,
absolutely
that's a fact. And our great Dusty Waite I'm going to back you up with some stats. In the first year that Simmons and Embiid played together, they were a plus 15.5. Second year, plus 7.6. This season, when they're on the floor together, plus 1.3. And it goes back to I think the fit is the biggest question. Yeah. How they play two different styles when Simmons on the floor and Embiid is not, when Embiid is on the floor and Simmons is not, and when they're both on the floor together, that's where nothing seems to fit. I think, and you go back to last postseason, I mean, one bounce by a Kawhi Leonard shot changed the trajectory. However,
they were that close.
Jimmy Butler being gone, to me, and add in J.J. Redick on that, but who's the leader in this locker room? Who's the leader? Are you relying on Joel, on Ben? Is Alec? Josh? Are you Josh Richardson? Are you asking the young guy, Tobias Harris? Like that?
And that shows on the road. They don't have a leader. They don't. Al Horford, they were hoping could be, and Al's a great professional. Right. But even you saw it last year in Boston with those young guys. He still didn't stabilize that locker room. I don't think his personality is strong enough and he's outspoken enough to control these guys. So that is a challenge for them. But talent-wise, it's all there if they can put it together. I think Ben, we'd love him to shoot more. But the way you counter the fact that you don't shoot jumpers is you stay aggressive. And if he were to drive the basketball aggressively and always be in attack mode, I'm not saying drive every time, but stay in attack mode, that would help. I'm one that believes, now a lot of people around the NBA don't believe this. I'm one that believes you still can stay in attack mode and penetrate even if you've got a big man down low. Because people used to do it all the time. The lane used to be clogged all the time.
You know why? Because those penetrators want to either get a bucket or a drop-off or get to the foul line. And Simmons doesn't want to get to the foul line.
That's the one. Because he will finish, and he's good enough to pass and find the big man.
But
you're right. He's got to.
He does it. He's
got mental blocks. He's got to get over.
You guys have to name me a team that's gotten to the NBA Finals in the past 15 to 20 years that did not have a supreme shot creator in the fourth quarter. A guy that could get you a bucket, that could get off the dribble. One dribble, get a shot, get a good shot for him or someone else. That's the one thing that Philadelphia does not have. Tobias Harris is good as a third option, but he's their first fourth quarter option. I don't think that's going to cut it. And you can't name me a team in history that had that type of big deficiency late in games.
But you said they won't even get out of the first round.
Yes, I said that.
Yes. They getting out of the first round.
I don't know.
If they play man to get their first round.
Ex-Uncle Rob Parker would say, we betting wins on that. They getting out of the first round.
Did you mention Rob Parker's name on this airway?
I got confused by the following.
Chicken wings, lemon pepper.
I'm just going to join whoever wins. I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't get out of the first round. I also wouldn't be surprised if they went to the finals. I think they are one of the most confusing teams that I've watched in quite some time.
We'll see. Look, their road record in the second half of the season will tell it all.
Tell me who their coach is. I'm just curious.
Brett Brown.
I thought he's there. Oh, okay. Because tell me, is he a net positive?
Let me ask you this.
Tell me, is he a net positive?
No, but let me ask you this. I think they got two options at the end of the season. If they go out early, like you say, or get blown out in the conference finals, find a new coach or trade Joel Embiid. Which one would you do?
I'm trading Ben Simmons.
Nah, come on, man.
Can't shoot, won't shoot. I'm trading.
How long is Embiid going to be?
I think any of those three things could happen.
Yes.
On to the Eagles. When Philly drafted Carson Wentz second overall back in 2016, expectations were high. And when the Eagles gave Wentz a 4-year, $128 million deal, the bar was raised even higher. But with injuries leading to just one playoff start in 4 seasons, every move the quarterback makes is put under a magnifying glass. Wentz's teammate, Lane Johnson, went on the herd yesterday to defend his quarterback.
Nobody faced more scrutiny, I think, over the past couple years than Carson. I think it was a weird predicament he was in with Nick Foles. I mean, how many times has anything like this happened before?
He's got Nick Foles as a statue at the stadium.
You have a statue at the stadium, man. Hey, and you have to go to work every day. I think he did a good job of ignoring the noise. I think he really worked his tail off this year. You know, they had the whole injury-prone label, this and that. I think he did a good job of working through it. I think he ignored the distractions. And I think he answered a lot of questions this year.
Canty, for you, what's your level of confidence in Wentz moving forward?
I'm confident in his ability. The only question I have is he going to be able to stay healthy? Now, I got to give him credit for last year playing all 16. He fought through some nicks and bruises, which is something that gets him some cred in the locker room. But as far as Carson Wentz's overall ability, I don't think that's ever been in question. I mean, it wasn't a question about whether or not he was a better quarterback in terms of doing all the things that are fundamental to the position. It wasn't a question of whether he was better than Nick Foles or not. He's clearly better than Nick Foles, and I think now we're seeing that Nick Foles actually went down to Jacksonville, and you saw he got supplanted by a rookie in Gardner Minshew. So I just look at Carson Wentz, and the only question I have is he going to be able to stay healthy? Because in his first 4 years, he was only healthy for the full season in 2 of them. And that's going to continue to be a question. Now, what he did in the last month of the season, after his team came off of a disappointing loss to the Miami Dolphins, they were 5-7. He dragged his team kicking and screaming down the stretch, throwing to guys like Boston Scott and Rob Davis and Deontay Burnett, Greg Ward. I mean, he's just throwing to a who's who cast of characters, but that just shows you how good this dude is. This is why Howie Roseman moved up to number 2 to take him a few years ago, because he has the ability to be a force multiplier. He can make everybody else around him better. And so from that perspective, I don't think anybody has been critical of Carson Wentz. Now, do you get a different degree of scrutiny when you become a top 5 quarterback in terms of pay scale? Absolutely. And especially when you inherit a roster that came off of a Super Bowl a couple of years ago with the backup quarterback. So I look at those different reasons and say, yeah, people put Carson Wentz under a microscope, but I don't think he's the most scrutinized quarterback in the National Football League. He's not even the most scrutinized quarterback in his draft class when you look at Dak Prescott and Jared Goff. So I think that we got to pump the brakes in terms of people being critical of Carson Wentz. Are there questions? Absolutely. But it's not about his overall ability.
No, I'm with you. And yeah, he's far from the most scrutinized quarterback. Baker Mayfield, who we just talked about, is far more scrutinized. And I think with Carson, what people are just doing is stating the facts. The facts are he was off to a great start that second year, almost certainly was going to be the MVP. But then they go to the Super Bowl and win it with his backup. Okay, fine. Comes back the next year, though, they start 5-6. And then he gets hurt, Foles gets in, and they look great again, going 4-1 down the stretch and do well in the playoffs. So those are the questions. Those are just facts people stated, and then you wonder why. Why was this team not that good with Carson, and then they take off under Nick Foles? And the teammates are building shrines to Nick Foles. So those are just facts. Lane Johnson can act like that he had nothing to do with that, but he's a part of the team too. He could have been like, we cannot do this. Mm-hmm. This is our quarterback. We can't build this. So I think a question that I have based on that, you mentioned the health, certainly that's a question. Another question, though, is the leadership. And that's something that's been a topic of discussion the last few years with him, too, related to the Nick Foles situation. That's why players gravitated more to Foles, because they had issues with Carson. The players that seemed to have issues with him were the veterans. And that's why, even though he had that great run at the end of the year, going 4-1 down the stretch and making the playoffs, he did it with the no-name guys. Boston Scott, Miles Sanders. You mentioned the receivers, Greg Ward, who was a quarterback. Guys who, no matter who was quarterbacking, they're just trying to show you they can play in the NFL for a long time. So they're trying to impress scouts and everybody who's watching, so they're doing whatever he says. When they get Alshon Jeffrey back, we'll see if Aguilar, he may be gone. When they get Deshaun Jackson back and all these guys, will they buy in to Carson Wentz and what he's selling? That's kind of my question. And if they don't, I can't have Carson just be a guy that can only lead the no-names. You know, he's got to be able to lead the veterans who've proven something too.
Well, I hear you on that, and confidence comes from demonstrated performance. Those veteran players had confidence in Nick Foles because he was the guy to deliver them a championship. He had that playoff run for the ages. Carson Wentz has not done that yet. So Carson Wentz has yet to win an actual playoff game, even though he got his team
Will they be
to the
impressed
playoffs.
with the late run? You think that changes
Well, I
anything
think
with
that
the vets?
does change a little bit. I mean, in the month of December, he was 10 touchdowns to 1 interception. So even though he was playing some really bad teams, he still had to go out there and win those games, and he delivered, especially when the team was shorthanded. So that does give him a little bit of respect amongst his teammates. But when you talk about Alshon Jeffrey and Deshaun Jackson buying into Carson Wentz, they ain't got no choice. Because if they don't, those guys are going to be moving on. Howie Roseman committed to Carson Wentz and paid him on a contract extension $34 million a year. If the organization has to make a decision between Wentz and Jackson or Wentz and Jeffrey, the decision is already made. So they got no choice but to fall in line. But the fact that he did have that run at the end of last year, I think that bodes well in terms of him being in a leadership position and the players in the locker room accepting that going into 2020.
Is it the leadership style? Is it just having the confidence because you've won with someone? I mean, where is it something that Wentz can grow into? Why would you say that it's unique and something that they need to buy into?
Well, I think it's a little bit of relatability. Like, I mean, think about where Carson Wentz comes from, North Dakota State, all of those different things relating to other guys in the locker room. I think that's the thing that we're trying to figure out. Can he find a way to meet players on their level in order to get the most out of them? But based on what he did with the young guys, I just feel like this is something that the rest of the team is going to have to buy into because the head coach is sold on him, the organization is sold on him, the owner is certainly sold on him, or he wouldn't have signed off on giving him the contract extension. So I think that Carson has solidified himself as the starting quarterback for the foreseeable future with the Eagles, and the players in that locker room can either get on board with that or they can go ahead and pack their bags and find somewhere else to play.
No, I agree with you, and I think they should have bought into Carson Wentz as far as the organization. Talking to somebody kind of close to that situation, I was told that there was a feeling that he kind of projected this I know it all mentality. And so when veterans would come and share with him things you could improve on or maybe do this, he just kind of brushed it off and continued to do it his own way. And Nick Foles, as you know, Nick Foles was one paint by numbers. I'm doing exactly what the play calls for, and that's why it worked. Whereas Wentz was more ad lib, kind of do his own thing because he's more talented, but it didn't work.
And I think the players have to give Carson a little bit of grace here because he's still a relatively young player.
Right.
Nick Foles has been in the league for a long time, so you can understand why the offense might click a little bit quicker when they made that change. But, I mean, Carson is still developing. He's still getting better. And when you couple that with the actual potential, the talent that he has, I can understand why the organization is sold on him. And I think the players need to get behind him because this is a guy that can play with the best quarterbacks in the National Football League. When you got a guy like that under center, you can't take that for granted. Trust me, I've been around the league long enough to know those guys are few and far in between. When you got one of them, you have an air of confidence because you always have a chance to win.
All right, time now to play in or out. Former Patriots linebacker Rob Ninkovich thinks a Tom Brady departure from New England could lead to a mass exodus. So, Canty, are you in or out on Bill Belichick winning a Super Bowl without Brady?
I am in on Bill Belichick winning a Super Bowl. Even if Tom Brady leaves, we'd be foolish to think that Bill Belichick doesn't have a contingency plan. He'll have an answer. It might not be as good as Tom, but he'll find a way for this team to be competitive. And let's keep in mind, they're still playing in the AFC East, a division that they've owned for the past 2 decades. So until this Patriots dynasty is dead and buried, I'm not going to count them out.
I'm out because I'm saying he won't win a Super Bowl without Brady anytime soon. Let's see what quarterback he gets. And I don't think whoever they get, they will win one next year.
Okay.
But whenever they get that franchise quarterback, could be 5 or 10 years, 7 years, whatever, then I give Belichick a chance because I do think he's the GOAT coach. But I'm going to be out because it's not going to be anytime soon.
Aren't he and Brady leading the dynasty? With no Brady, is it?
It's both of them. It's both of them. We'll see what happens.
You seem to lean more toward the coach.
Speaking of Brady, a former NFL agent predicts TB12 will sign a $100 million deal in free agency. So, Chris Broussard, are you in or out on Brady being worth $100 million?
I'm out. As much as I like Tom Brady, at 43 years old, why in the world would I give somebody $100 million and 3 years? I just don't see that. If it's $100 million with $30 million guaranteed and a team option after the first year, okay, I'm in on that. But I cannot commit to him $100 million when I don't know. I think he's got to be on year-to-year deals at this point.
No, you know why he's worth $100 million? When you're with a team that's going through a recent relocation, if you need to sell tickets and PSLs, Chargers, Las Vegas Raiders, both of those organizations need a marquee player, a marquee name. There is no bigger name in the National Football League than TB12.
Well, the Raiders they're going to sell no matter what in Vegas. The Chargers,
it's a different type of buzz when Tom Brady is your quarterback over Derek Carr. And so you want to get your fan base energized and excited with the move.
What if he becomes Peyton Manning in his last year?
It does not matter. It doesn't matter for those organizations in terms of what they're trying to accomplish. What about
it won't matter for the first year. It would matter for the next two.
Let me ask you a question. What about what you've seen from the Chargers or the Raiders would lead you believe those organizations are committed to winning at the highest level?
The fact that they gave Gruden $100 million over 10 years.
Okay, they gave Gruden $100 million because they needed a face. They needed a face. That's what they're trying to do.
If the Chargers, I agree.
If they were committed, why didn't they pay Khalil Mack or Amari Cooper?
That was Gruden's decision.
Okay, I'm just saying.
Hold on. If the Chargers give him 3 years, $100 million, I'm with you in that. The first year it's going to be a buzz. They're going to fill up that stadium. They might even get a few fans in L.A. But if Brady is bad, if he looks every bit of the 43 years that he is, that's going to fade very quickly, and it'll be a bust.
More on this a little later. All right, on to the Browns, where new offensive coordinator Alex Van Pelt said Baker Mayfield has a, quote, bright future. So, Broussard, are you in or out on Baker leading Cleveland to the playoffs this season?
I'm out. I'm in on the bright future, but I'm out on the playoffs next year, at least at this point. But just because Baltimore obviously is going to be tough, assuming Lamar Jackson is healthy. And Pittsburgh was good last year, almost made the playoffs last year. They'll get Big Ben back. It's going to be tough for them to make it in that division, so I'm out.
I'm in on Baker Mayfield leading the Browns to the playoffs just for the simple fact that outside of the Chiefs and the Ravens, none of the teams in the AFC scare me. I'm not afraid of the Patriots. I'm not afraid of the Steelers when Big Ben comes back because he's 38 years old and his elbow almost fell off. I'm not afraid of the Texans. I'm not afraid of the Bills. I'm not afraid of the Titans. I think the Cleveland Browns are as talented as any of those teams at the bottom of that AFC playoff field from a year ago. So that's why I'm in on Baker Mayfield and Kevin Stefanski getting things turned around and Cleveland making a playoff push.
Have you been all in and you've been all out?
Yes.
Yeah, we're on opposite sides of this thing.
I see.
Literally and figuratively.
I thought you were frat brothers. On to Marshawn Lynch. Beast Mode made an appearance in the trailer for the HBO show Westworld, which had us wondering, Canty, are you in or out on Marshawn's starting an acting career?
Sarah, I am all in on Money Lynch being an actor. Marshawn Lynch has showed us he's going to get to them chickens. He's going to do it. Whether he's playing football or whether he's on the silver screen acting, it's going to happen.
This is one we agree on. I am in. Now, this show is about robot cowboys, I'm told. Is that correct?
Yes.
I don't know.
Yes, it's
Robot
like an amusement park for adults where they can do anything in a community of robots.
Wow.
That are supposed to be
a lot
human.
about it. Is it good?
Well, I tried to watch it for the first full season, and after that, I just checked out.
Really?
But that was the premise. It might have changed by now. I don't know.
Great.
I don't know if it's the same.
That premise?
I only watch NBA
I don't think it was somebody
NFL
sober that
games
thought about
and
that.
All right, moving on to Kyrie's former teammate, LeBron James. No kidding.
My goodness,
Vince.
Sarah had to move over.
now.
A few inches away from you.
The King has his Lakers in first place in the West and on a mission to win the franchise their first title in 10 years. But reigning Finals MVP Kawhi Leonard might have something to say about it. The King and the Claw could face off in an epic Western Conference Finals in May. But Lakers legend Magic Johnson thinks it might come down to the supporting cast.
If you look at man per man, they're probably better than us in terms of the bench. But I think that Anthony Davis and LeBron James, to me, are
Broussard, we've been talking about this since the off season. We'll be talking about it through the rest of the season. Who wins between the Lakers and the Clippers in a 7-game series?
Well, I think Magic hit it on the head. The Clippers are certainly the deeper team. They're, I think, the better team. I would have them favored. Now, I don't think the Lakers can't beat them. I think the Clippers are favored. I would say maybe 65-35, something like that. But the Lakers have a shot, and Magic hit it on the head. I think a few things have to happen for the Lakers to beat them. It's possible. One, LeBron has to put on some type of heroic performance where you just kind of lift your team over a better team. He did it in 2016, coming down from the 3-1 deficit against Golden State. Can he do it at 35 years old? We'll see, but that's necessary. The second thing, and this is the big one to me, Anthony Davis has got to dominate that series. Because even as great as LeBron may be, Kawhi is going to be great, and Paul George is going to be great on the perimeter. They have nobody that really can match up with Anthony Davis. Now, Marcus Morris was a good get, and he can defend in the low post and, probably defend him better than Kawhi and Paul George and Zubac and Montrezl Harrell. But still, AD should be able to have his way against whoever they put on him. The question is, does he have that mentality? And what is baffling me about the Lakers is that if you look at their numbers, now this number is going to shock you because it shocked me when I first found it out a few weeks ago. Anthony Davis is only averaging 5.5 minutes on the court in the fourth quarters. And it's not because they're blowing everybody out, because LeBron is playing 9 minutes a game in the fourth. It is because the way they stagger the minutes, they have AD play the whole third quarter and then sitting for bulks of the fourth. But he's only averaging 3 points in the fourth quarter. Of his 27, only 3 of them are coming in the fourth, and only 3 shots in the fourth quarter. So I think the second half of the season for the Lakers needs to be about, you got to change that rotation, first of all, and have AD playing most of the fourth quarter and feed him, even if it costs you some games. But get him used to being a go-to guy in the fourth. They did it a little against Denver before the All-Star break, and he looked good. He hit a 3, played well. So I think that's something they got to work on. And the third thing, Magic mentioned them needing a third scorer, Kyle Kuzma. But get him better acclimated, get him more comfortable. And some of it's on him too, but I think that needs to be a focus. Again, even if it costs you a few regular season games, I would focus on AD and Kyle Kuzma, getting them playoff ready.
Well, you brought up 2 points about getting AD and Kuzma involved in more primary focus as scorers. That takes away from LeBron being this hub that everything runs through. LeBron has to function as the main piece when you look at the on-off numbers. Anthony Davis, when the team runs through Anthony Davis, the on-off numbers are stark in the difference with Anthony Davis with LeBron without him. That's on coaching, and that's on how the structure of the team is, where LeBron is the point guard and everything runs through him. LeBron is going to have to take a step back.
Right.
If it's going to be that series against the Clippers where you got 3 guys that can defend them, not just Kawhi and Paul George, but Pat Beverly's going to get in his face and make things uncomfortable for him. So remember how Shaq and Kobe had those series where if you were playing against the Spurs, you knew Shaq wasn't going to dominate Duncan and Robinson. So it's going to be a Kobe series because he had the matchups. Right. If this is going to be the same thing, there has to be a stage where LeBron says, you know what, this isn't my series. And he's never actually had to do that in his career where he says, this isn't my series because the matchup doesn't lend to me being the dominant player. He's going to have to tell Anthony Davis, I'll take a step back, you go and dominate, but if you don't practice that in the regular season, how's that going to happen in the postseason? And when LeBron is in year 17 and he's never done that, what does that look like? So to me, the Lakers don't know what they want to be. The Clippers at least know what they want to be in a 7-game series as far as their toughness, their coaching, their structure, their order. The Lakers are still they're not pretenders, I'm not going to say that, but they're relying so heavily on just raw natural talent and not necessarily structure and order.
And I like your point about, like we both agree, AD needs to be dominant, it needs to be his series. But that doesn't mean, I don't know that means LeBron having to step back, because LeBron is the point guard. So as the point guard, it's part of his job. He's leading the league in assists, is to get the other guys involved.
It just has to go through it. It has to go through Anthony Davis.
He said that the offense is going to run through AD, which we can argue about whether it's doing that the first 3 quarters. It's clearly not doing that in the fourth. LeBron leads the league in fourth quarter field goal attempts. So they're looking at it as LeBron's, I guess, our closer. LeBron has closed many games. We all know that. But he doesn't have the mentality of a pure closer. That's why he'll pass it off, to an open teammate at times, whereas Kobe or Michael Jordan was going to go get that bucket. That's a mentality. Kyrie, mentality of a closer. I think the Clippers have more guys. Kawhi, Lou Williams, even Paul George.
I don't know if I trust Lou Williams down the stretch of games because of his shot. Because of the shot selection, it can be very feast or famine.
I think he's a closer, though.
No, he's not afraid to take those shots.
That's where, my question comes to who are you? Of course, you don't want to bet against LeBron James, but after that, you already mentioned you could toss Kawhi on him. You could toss Paul George on him. If you want to put Beverly on him, they got Marcus Morris now. You could toss bodies, different looks. Who else are you trusting on this Lakers roster other than Anthony Davis and not necessarily being in that position before in the postseason? And you can go down, check off the list for the Clippers, whether it's Kawhi, whether it's Paul George, whether it's Montrezl Harrell and Lou Williams, with Pat Beverly. And there are so many players, even Morris, with experience. And I think the Clippers have another level that they even tapped into yet, that they're still waiting to go to. The Lakers have been playing full bore since the start of the season. They've gelled quickly. It's been impressive to see where they're at and the numbers they're at. Clippers right behind them, and they've got Kawhi Leonard load managing. Paul George hasn't played in all the games. Beverly's been hurt. I mean, they still, the coaching staff of Doc Rivers, and you got Sam Cassell and Tyronn Lue, and just all these players who understand the nuances of how to coach in the postseason together. I think we're going to see a very different Clippers team down the stretch and in the postseason.
Not to go Nick right on you guys, but are you betting against LeBron in the Game 7?
No,
if it gets to that,
if it gets to a Game 7, then I think the Lakers are in really good. They're in really good shape.
LeBron can get you a game. Kawhi can get you a series.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, look,
but to me, it's not just Kawhi. That's why I think the Clippers, you look at the totality.
I don't know if Game 17 can get you a series anymore.
Oh, yeah, he can get you a series. But I look, if the Lakers get them to Game 7, we know it's going to be a home game for the Lakers, whoever has the advantage. That'd be good for them, because that means they've played them tough. They need to beat the Clippers once in the regular season, though.
Because that matters.
I don't usually put a ton of credibility in the regular season, but mentally for them.
Thank you for listening to the First Things First podcast. Remember, leave us a review and tell us what you think. Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts and catch us on FS1 Monday through Friday, 6:30 a.m. Eastern.